Now, the title of today's message is The Sacrifice of Worship. And the statement that I want you guys to hang on to this week to remember this message is Christians are called to sacrifice. That's one of the things that we need to be doing. Quick review. Since the beginning of June, we've been walking through this idea of spiritual disciplines, and we go through spiritual disciplines so that we can grow as Christians. We started off talking about how the Bible is important, that we need to be daily ingesting the Bible. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes of reading, 5 minutes a day. It's that consistency over time that makes a huge difference. We talked about the importance of church, and that church really isn't a building, it's a group of people. It's an ecclesia. That's the original meaning in the Greek, is a group of people. We talked about the benefits of going and why we need to become a part of that. Then we looked at the heart condition. We needed to check our heart soil to make sure that we were in a place where we could receive these particular lessons. We have now moved on to worship. And I have to tell you, I was a little nervous when I was creating this series, because I knew I wanted to talk about worship, but before I really dove in to study it, I thought worship was the slow songs. You guys know what I'm talking about? When we praise and worship, I thought praise were the songs that made you clap your hands. Worship, they were the songs that made you raise your hands. So I'm thinking, how in the world am I going to teach about a beat? Like, what are we going to talk about for one Sunday? I've spread this into 3. I don't even know how I've done that. When we're just talking about the tempo. Like, I didn't know until I really dove in and discovered that worship, first of all, it's a verb. It's not a tempo. It's not the beat of the music. And really, when you look at the times when worship was established in the Bible, it occurred in 3 different ways. The first, and I love that they're all S's, the first is submission. And really what submission is acknowledging that God is sovereign, that he's the boss. We say that, but again, worship's a verb, and so the action that matches what we say is that we submit our will to him. We try to do our best. We're not going to bat 1,000 here, but we try to do our best to live a life that honors him. That's the first way that we worship God. The second way that we worship God is through service, and that's acknowledging that you love God. And we see a great example of that in Jesus, where in the New Testament it says Jesus came down not to be served, but to serve. And the service that he provided us was he redeemed us on the cross. And we know that that is the ultimate act of love, because the word tells us that no greater love has a man than this, that he is willing to lay down his life for a friend, which is exactly what Jesus does for us. And so we know that when we serve God, when we serve his kingdom, that is the action that acknowledges our love for him. And last week we talked about the different ways and the different areas that we can serve. I'm passing out a sheet for Fall Fest. That's serving. We had a welcome table. Rodney was leading that. That's serving. The worship team up here, that's serving. There are so many ways, even in our church, in its infancy, that people can plug in to serve. And I believe that that is one of the most critical things that a church can do for each other, is to provide opportunities to serve, because that's how we show God we love him. Today, though, we're talking about sacrifice. Not a real popular term in our culture, is it? But really what sacrifice says is that it's acknowledging that God is more important than your discomfort. That you are willing to give something up because God is first. And really that's broken down into 3 ways. Sacrifice is in our fasting. I know, not a super popular term either. Our finances and our free time. And okay, listen, I said free time because I had this alliteration thing going. It's really just time. But the only way I could get the other F in was to say free time. So it's really our time. That's a resource, especially in the United States. It's really important for us. Our time is very, very valuable. Now it's story time. I'm going to tattle on myself. When I was a baby Christian, one of the sermons I listened to one Sunday was about fasting. And the sermon in particular was about how the Pharisees, when they fasted, now the Pharisees, those were the super, super religious guys in Jesus' time, that they were hypocrites. That's how Jesus described them. And when they fasted, they did it hypocritically. They would go to the corner and they would rip their clothes and they would put ash on their face because they wanted every person to know that they were fasting. They wanted that recognition. So this particular sermon about fasting was, hey, when you fast, fast secretly. Don't tell anybody. Now I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret about me. I'm a little crazy. That laugh was not necessary. I am a little crazy, and I like to do things that are hardcore. I know I'm broken. I don't know how to explain it. So that's why I like to run. That's why I like to cycle. I like to lift heavy. I drink black coffee. I read I know, I'm hardcore, Harley. I read a book in one setting. Like, if it's hardcore, I'm interested in it. Right up into the place where my safety's involved. I'm not going to jump out of an airplane. You will never see me leave a perfectly good airplane. Don't ever worry about that. I'm not going to swim in the ocean. There are sharks in there. But if you want me to do something for you and it doesn't involve sharks or airplanes, then just convince me that it's hardcore and I'm probably going to do it. Like that's a way you can get me to do your will. I shouldn't have shared that with my husband here. But at any rate, this particular sermon made me think, man, fasting sounds hardcore. You know what? I'm going to do it tomorrow, and I'm going to do it just like it says. I'm not going to tell anybody. I didn't even tell my husband. He didn't even know. Woke up, felt very good about myself. I'm going to fast all day, right? Well, that particular day, I was supposed to meet with my trainer. I can't tell anybody. I'm supposed to fast in secret. So I thought, well, I can't. I got to go. So all day I didn't eat. I go to my trainer. Now, you got to know my trainer at the time. He's not anymore, which is sad because I loved him. He was this adorable older black man. Now, when I say adorable, he was 6'4" and built like a Buick, so he probably wouldn't have liked me to call him adorable, but he was such a great trainer. And we're getting through, I'm halfway through, and I have no gas in the tank. You guys know what I mean? And halfway through, I'm like, I just need to sit down here. I lay on the ground in the middle of the gym, in the middle of my set, and I'm just looking up at the ceiling. I can't move. My adorable trainer, 6'4", Buick, looks at me like this, and he goes, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "Look," and I was confessing my deepest, darkest secret. I said, "Look, I'm fasting today. I didn't want to say anything, but I haven't eaten all day." And he was like, "Maybe we should just be done for the day," right? That was my first and last time I've ever fasted. But no, really, what was wrong with that is I wasn't doing it for God. It wasn't a sacrifice. I was doing it for myself. I was doing it to look cool. And really, in that moment, the only difference between me and the Pharisees is that no one else knew how stupid I was being, right? I didn't broadcast it like they did. The definition of sacrifice and the verb portion of it is to give up something for something or someone else considered more important. That's what sacrifice is. We are taking something that is precious to us and we are giving it up because we acknowledge that there is something or someone greater. Fasting is a type of sacrifice because we give up food. Food's important. Who likes food here? Big fan. Eat at least 3 times a day. Sometimes I do have second breakfast. Any hobbits in here? Okay. It's very important. And in doing so, though, when we fast, what we're showing God through our actions is that He's more important than the discomfort of being hungry. That's why it's a sacrifice. Now, I know what you're thinking, April, why in the world are we talking about sacrifice and fasting? Like why fasting of all of the things that we could be discussing? Well, here's the deal. In the Old Testament, it was talked about a lot. A lot of the Bible heroes that you're very familiar with would pray and fast to God. Esther is a great example. Before she would go before the king to pledge or to ask him to protect her people. She fasted, and she asked her people to also fast. Daniel fasted. Daniel was the dude in the lion's den. There's even a book called the Daniel Fast. Like, that's how popular his particular fast was. Nehemiah fasted. He fasted when he heard that the temple had been destroyed in his hometown in the holy city of Jerusalem. He prayed and fasted to God when he heard that. And David fasted all the time. Like, just read through the Psalms. He was constantly fasting about something. So I think we can definitely say, even though in our modern churches we don't typically spend a lot of time discussing fasting, that it is definitely a thing. It is definitely something that was done often in the Bible. Now let's fast forward to the Pharisees, because they were such great examples of bad examples. And this is how Jesus felt about the Pharisees. In Matthew 6:16 through 18, he says, "And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites." That's the Pharisees. "For they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you that they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you." That's what fasting should be. So Jesus, in this set of scriptures, sort of wraps it up, what it looks like, what we need to be doing, and a really great example of how not to handle it. Why? Because the Pharisees turned their worship, turned that sacrifice of theirs into a sideshow. It was a spectacle. They were no longer doing it for God. They were doing it for themselves. So when they did that, it took away that element that made it a sacrifice. In fact, this was one of the critiques that Jesus got. Now, this wasn't a critique from the Pharisees, although the Pharisees were very opinionated about what Jesus did. This one was from John the Baptist's disciples. Now, John the Baptist, he was the one that was the voice crying out in the wilderness. He was the one that were preparing people for the Messiah. And John was very clear that he was not the Messiah, but his disciples, they really wanted him to be. They did. They wanted to follow the important one. Do you guys get that? And so they were constantly looking at ways to critique Jesus. And one of the ways we see this in Matthew 9:14 through 15, it says, "When John's disciples came to Jesus, saying, 'Why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?' Well, Jesus said to them, 'Can the wedding guests be sad while the groom is with them? The time will come when the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast.'" What was happening here? Was Jesus against fasting? Well, no. I mean, just in a few scriptures down, he explains how to do it. And we know that he fasted in the wilderness because he fasted for 40 days. So we know that Jesus wasn't anti-fasting, but what he was saying here is, listen, you have turned fasting, this sacrifice, into this religious routine. You've made it this exercise. It is no longer now a sacrifice. It's become a habit. And when it's become a habit, it loses the element of the loss. Here's what I mean by that. Teenagers, when I was your age, I would sleep well into the mid-afternoons. You guys, I loved sleeping in. Who's with any? Yeah. I mean, 11, 12 was nothing to go to 1 p.m. I loved it. It was great. Now, there were times when I couldn't sleep in, and I had to sacrifice, I had to give up those few hours of sleep, right? That was would you guys agree that's a sacrifice? Okay. I don't sleep that late anymore. At 39 years old, if I get past 9, I'm doing pretty good. I'm usually up 7, 8. If I can sleep in till 9, it's feeling great. I'm still losing those same hours, right? I'm still losing the hours that I used to get for sleep. But because my habits have changed, those time hours no longer are a sacrifice. Does that make sense? It's a habit for me to wake up earlier, so to be out of bed and up by 9 is no longer a loss to me. It's now a habit. That's what the Pharisees were doing, and that's what John's disciples were doing. The Pharisees would fast twice a week. So it was no longer this moment of, I need to pray, I'm prompted by the Holy Spirit, so today I'm going to fast. This was it's Monday morning time to fast. On Fridays we fast, right? I mean, it was that mentality of a routine. Fasting is not some religious exercise, but it does provide a purpose in our lives as believers. The purpose of fasting is to develop some spiritual strength, including resisting temptation, and most importantly, it's a way for us to show humility. Here's why. When we fast, literally what we're doing is we are taking one of our most basic needs, which is sustenance. Who agrees we need food? You go an extended length of time without food, you're going to have some problems. We need it. It is a basic need. We are taking one of our most basic needs and we are denying that need, incurring the discomfort from hunger to show that God is more important. That's humility. We're saying in that moment, God, you're first. That's why it's sacrifice. That's why it's worship. I'm taking my need and I'm putting it second. And I'm experiencing some of the discomfort that comes with missing that need. That's humble. It also requires some spiritual maturity. This is not for the newbies. You guys know what I'm talking about? Who's had some babies in their lives? Ever tried to convince a 6-month-old they need to wait 10 minutes? Listen, my son Nate, I don't know where he's at. He's gone. Maybe he knew. Oh, there he is. I'm going to talk about you. He was the best baby in the world. Abby was good. Nate was the best. And the only time he ever cried was when he was hungry. And it was like a light was switched. He would go from being happy to hungry, and we all knew it. You guys, and Shelly knows she was his daycare provider. I could be mixing up a bottle in front of them. He did not care. He wanted food, and he wanted food right now. He was a baby. There was no reasoning with him. Now at 15, when he's hungry, and we go to Mod Pizza, he's not screaming at the guys making pizza to make him faster. No, he's matured a little bit. He's grown a little bit. Now he just rolls his eyes. So that's the same thing for us as Christians. You need to be a little further down the road to really engage in fasting in a meaningful way. As a baby Christian, that's part of where my story came from. I was really too young in the faith to really understand and grasp what fasting is. So what does this mean for you? Well, first of all, I don't want you guys to rush home and think I'm telling you guys to fast. That is not what I'm doing. I am trying to provide you some information about what fasting is, because the last thing I want is for you guys to start reading about fasting in the Bible and either think that you need to do it or think that you don't need to do it, right? I wanted to give you some understanding of what it is, but don't rush out this week and fast. That's not what I'm saying. What I am telling you, though, is that as you grow in your faith, if you feel prompted, this is key, if you feel prompted by the Holy Spirit to fast, you'll have an understanding of what that means. It's not just abstaining from food for a day, or, in Jesus' case, 40. It's that moment where you say, God, you're first. I am laying this basic need down because I'm focusing on you. There is a purpose. It is an act of humility. It is a sacrifice. Therefore, it is a form of worship. So bottom line, fasting is one of the ways, just one, that we can worship God. And when we fast, what we're doing is we're acknowledging that God is more important than our comfort.